Remember the Forgotten.
Chapter 6. Buried Treasure. Right, James said, patting his horse and closing the latch on the pack hanging from its saddle. All packed up. Him and Sapphire stood at the edge of the village, half surrounded by tall green trees painted a bleak shade under the pale light of the overcast sky. Samuel stood a few feet away, boots crunching on the dry dirt of the road as he waited anxiously. James heaved up onto his horse with a grunt and took hold of the reins, his steed breathing out a cloud of air almost visible in the slight chill. Reaching out towards Samuel with a disinterested expression, he gripped the boy's wrist and pulled him up to awkwardly stumble into a sitting position on the back of the saddle. Sapphire then fastened her own packs and leapt onto the other horse, urging it forward as they finally began their journey. As the houses of Machiavel began to fade into distant shapes nestled between the outstretching woods, Sapphire finally broke the silence that had plagued the air since their departure. "So, Samuel," she inquired, "where do you come from? I've not seen you in Machiavel before." "I travel around," answered Samuel, scratching his head through his hood. Sapphire nodded in response. "And what's a boy like you doing out here in Machiavel?" Samuel's voice sounded uncertain as he spoke, almost inquisitive. "I'm searching for something." "And I suppose that something lies at the end of this map?" asked Sapphire. "I don't know," answered Samuel. "I hope so." "What is it you're actually after?" asked James out of nowhere, his tone entirely unenthusiastic. "It might help us to know what we're actually doing out here." Samuel shrugged. "Well, I don't really know. If I did, I wouldn't need a map." "Is that really all you're going to tell us?" James scoffed, not accepting Samuel's answer. "You obviously aren't out here on a whim. Maybe you don't know what lies at the end of that map, but you sure as hell know something." "Is there really nothing more you can tell us?" continued Sapphire. "James is right. You obviously aren't a treasure hunter. You're out here for a reason." Samuel wriggled slightly in his seat, a moment of silence passing as he seemingly considered his answer. "Well, he began nervously. "I can sort of see things." "Wow," said James, rolling his eyes sarcastically. "What a unique trait. You hear that, Sapphire? He sees things." Sapphire sighed in response. "James, please shut up." Samuel inhaled an uncertain breath and continued as his eyes wandered uneasily across the trees. "I mean, I can see things that others don't. A gift, you could maybe call it." James gritted his teeth and kept silent, a look of frustrated exasperation washing over his face. Oblivious to this, Samuel continued. "It's complicated and confusing. I don't even really understand it myself." A moment of quiet presided over the three as the horses trotted onward, the clacks of their hooves the only noise to permeate the still woodlands. "Don't leave us hanging then," requested Sapphire. "What is it you can see?" Samuel hesitated, pursing his lips before replying. Well, it's a sort of sixth sense for magic." A moment of silence passed. Then James scoffed and rolled his eyes again. "Sure you do, kid." "It's true," Samuel insisted. "I've been able to sense it for as long as I can remember, like that sword on your hip." "It glows," dismissed James. "Anyone could tell that it's magical." Samuel went silent for a moment more. "Well, whatever," he then said. "I don't need you to believe in strange things. I just need you to protect me from them." "An ability to sense magic isn't the part I don't believe," James then told him, shifting about on his saddle frustratedly. "It's odd, sure, but I see lots of odd things in my line of work. The part I don't believe is that somebody with a gift like that would be out all alone in a place like this." "Don't be so dramatic, James," groaned Sapphire. "And Samuel's right. We've been paid to keep him safe, and that's what we're going to do, gift or no gift." James then sighed and gently shook his head, deciding to focus his attention ahead onto the road winding out before them. The hours passed by as they rode along, little further conversation erupting from the three stoic travellers. Eventually, on a small stretch of road that looked like any other they had passed under the same cloudy sky, James pulled the reins on his horse and slowed to a stop. "This should be it, more or less," he declared, slowly hopping off his mount and striding over towards the tree line on the left side. "Show me that map again, will you?" Sapphire helped Samuel down from his horse, and they both followed behind, peering over James's shoulder into the dark undergrowth. Samuel pulled the map from his book and hesitantly handed it to James, who looked down at it and up at the woods around himself, comparing them in his mind. "Do we just walk through the woods?" Samuel asked. "Hang on," said James, handing Samuel back the map and beginning to walk the length of the tree line, looking closely down at the shrubs and weeds at the edge of the road. Sapphire nodded in wordless understanding and began to do the same in the other direction, while Samuel stood silently and watched on in confusion. "Found something," called James, waving the others over. "This path has definitely been walked." Stepping up beside James's crouched figure, Samuel and Sapphire could both see at the edge of the woods broken branches and trampled weeds that were definite signs someone had walked this way before. Recently, no less. James looked up at them from his crouched position and nodded. "We go this way. Be ready for anything." The walk through the woods was not unpleasant, birdsong filling the ears of the three as they made their way through the dimly lit forest. It was not long either, as soon enough James led the group towards a single tree, standing tall and isolated in a small clearing where its long and gnarled branches seemed to fight off the nearby growth. It was dark as well, darker than the others, leaning so heavily to the side it seemed as if its roots could break free from the ground at any moment. This unique sight being enough to confirm they had found their X, the three stepped into the clearing and looked around. "Not much here, but this is definitely it," said James. "Looks like this might be a bust." No, added Samuel, clearly concerned. "There'll be something. Keep looking." The boy scoured the forest floor, eyes flitting from dried leaves to broken twigs, protruding roots and wild weeds. Among the bare ground of this clearing, however, his eyes quickly settled on a small patch of earth, laying just before the base of the large tree. It contrasted against the otherwise settled and vibrant forest floor, scattered and uneven in a way no wild beast would leave it. Samuel didn't hesitate, scurrying over to the patch and beginning to swipe away the soil. "Is something buried there?" James asked, slightly surprised. "Shall I go back to the horses and fetch a shovel?" "It's fine," Samuel told him, dropping to his knees and continuing to claw at the dirt with an enthusiasm not yet seen. "I'll dig it up." Samuel reached in and grabbed clump after clump of dirt, slowly but surely carving a hole into the earth. Behind him, James and Sapphire stood at the edge of the clearing, speaking in hushed tones. "Do you think we can trust this guy?" whispered James, watching Samuel intensely as he dug. "He's just a kid," replied Sapphire. "Let's get him what he's looking for and go." Suddenly, the sound of Samuel's digging stopped, and he turned toward them with wide eyes. "I found something!" Samuel stood up, and all three of them peered down into the hole he had dug. Buried, not even a foot deep, was the top of what appeared to be a small chest. With a look from Samuel that asked for help without words, James and Sapphire leant down, grabbed it by its edge, and began to heave, soon tearing the container from the soft earth before placing it down beside the hole. As the soil fell from its frame, Samuel scurried over and dropped to the floor beside it, grabbing its edges slowly with a look of awe and anticipation on his face. Despite himself, James was very curious now. He and Sapphire watched over Samuel's shoulder as he excitedly flipped the latch and then slowly opened the lid. As he did, a slight red glow emanating from within the box slowly washed over the boy's face, his eyes aglow even brighter. In the box, sitting alone amongst specks of dust and dirt, there was a gem. A brilliant, shining red gem, almost completely spherical. Its front face was hexagonal, the middle appearing almost like the pupil of an eye. Samuel eyes still wide, reached carefully out towards the object and grasped it in his hand, pulling it closer and staring deep into it. "What the hell is that?" James was cut off from his inquiry, senses alert as something suddenly came barreling out of the shrubbery behind the huge gnarled tree. It moved quickly, almost a blur. James could make out only the sharp claws at the end of its limbs, with which it bounded forward, a beastly hissing emanating from its fierce maw. Without thinking, he grabbed his crossbow from his back and fired a near-instant shot toward the creature. The blur stopped dead as the bolt pierced its lower chest, now suddenly all too visible. It was small, only a couple feet tall, with grey skin, smooth like stone, and long, thin limbs ending in sharp claws. Its horrid, demonic-looking visage contorted as it fell to its knees and collapsed with a shrill and unearthly cry. James looked at Sapphire, who had already drawn her sword, and the two proceeded to spin around, scouring the tree line for any more signs of danger. When nothing was apparent, James nodded for Sapphire to keep watch and cautiously ran over to the face-down creature, then kicking it slightly with his boot to ensure it was dead. To James's surprise, the creature's body appeared to be rock solid. He kicked its arm, but it remained frozen in its pained pose. He leaned down and rolled the creature face up. It was heavy, like a statue, and as he leaned in to inspect it closer, that was all it appeared to be. There was no trace of organic material, no flesh, no hair, not even any moisture. The creature that moments ago had been sprinting from the woods with fierce bloodlust was now nothing more than an ugly-looking rock. He turned again to Sapphire, and she nodded to him to signal no further threat. James breathed a deep breath and finally turned to Samuel. "Was that the danger you were expecting then?" he asked. "Didn't seem all that bad to me." Samuel, strangely, was still staring into the gem, his eyes aglow in its red reflection, seeming as if he hadn't moved an inch the entire time. "Samuel?" James repeated. He looked confusedly to Sapphire, who simply shrugged back, and then he finally marched over to the boy. "Samuel," he repeated again, gripping the boy's shoulder and trying to shake him from his trance. After a few seconds, James let go and stepped back, perplexed by the strange behaviour as he looked to Sapphire for guidance. Then, finally, Samuel slowly lifted his head from the gem, staring straight ahead again for a few seconds before eventually looking up towards James. James stared back expectantly, frustratedly awaiting an explanation. As he did, he looked into Samuel's wide open eyes. He saw something in them. Something sad, something determined, something different. "We need to go," announced Samuel, placing the gem in his cloak pocket and rising to his feet. His gaze met the stone creature lying on the ground, and a look of shock washed over his face, followed by concern. He visibly swallowed, then, without a word, began to stride absent-mindedly back towards the road. James turned to Sapphire, disturbed uncertainty painting his face. "Something strange just happened," he told her. They both turned their heads to watch Samuel as he began to make his way toward the road. When he reached the edge of the clearing, he turned back and looked at the pair confusedly. "Are you coming?"